Do modern laws discriminate against the impoverished and create a cycle of incarceration? A sociological exploration. Introduction. The intersection of poverty and the criminal justice system has long been a topic of significant concern, with countless studies indicating a stark correlation between socioeconomic status and legal outcomes. This article aims to explore the multifaceted ways in which modern laws perpetuate socioeconomic inequalities, resulting in a cycle of incarceration that disproportionately affects low-income and minimum-wage populations. Through a sociological lens, we will delve into various aspects of the criminal justice system, including bail reform, legal representation, fines and fees, and the broader systemic biases that create and sustain these cycles of disadvantage. The cash bail system and pretrial detention. One of the most apparent examples of systemic bias within the criminal justice system is the cash bail system. When an individual is arrested, their ability to await trial from the comfort of their home largely hinges on their financial resources. This creates a bifurcated system where the wealthy can secure their release almost immediately, while those with limited financial means often face extended periods of pretrial detention. This disparity not only highlights the inherent inequality within the system, but also exacerbates the socioeconomic challenges faced by low-income individuals. The consequences of pretrial detention are profound and far-reaching. Loss of employment, housing instability, family separation, and an increased likelihood of pleading guilty are just a few of the severe repercussions. Prolonged pretrial detention can also lead to higher rates of conviction and longer sentences, as individuals may accept plea deals simply to expedite their release, regardless of their actual guilt or innocence. Quality of legal representation. The quality of legal representation is another critical factor that underscores the systemic bias against the impoverished. Those who can afford private attorneys often benefit from selective caseloads, extensive resources, comprehensive case preparation, and access to expert witnesses. In contrast, individuals relying on public defenders face overwhelming caseloads, limited investigative resources, minimal time per case, restricted access to expert witnesses, and high turnover rates among their legal representatives. This disparity in legal representation quality significantly impacts case outcomes, further entrenching socioeconomic inequalities within the criminal justice system. Without adequate representation, low-income individuals are less likely to achieve favorable outcomes in court, perpetuating a cycle of disadvantage and incarceration. Fines and fees. The reliance on fines and fees within the criminal justice system effectively creates a modern-day debtor's prison. Court costs, supervision fees, electronic monitoring charges, drug testing fees, and mandatory program costs often exceed what low-income individuals can afford to pay. Failure to meet these financial obligations can result in additional penalties, extended supervision, rearrest for non-payment, suspension of driver's licenses, and damage to credit scores. This financial burden disproportionately affects the poor, perpetuating a cycle of disadvantage and increasing the likelihood of further entanglement with the criminal justice system. The inability to pay fines and fees can lead to a cascade of negative consequences that further entrench individuals in poverty and criminality. Collateral consequences. The collateral consequences of a criminal record extend far beyond the courtroom, disproportionately impacting low-income individuals in various aspects of their lives. Employment barriers, housing restrictions, and educational limitations are just a few examples of the far-reaching effects of a criminal record. Employment barriers. Many employers conduct background checks as part of their hiring process, and a criminal record can significantly hinder an individual's ability to secure employment. Professional license restrictions further limit job opportunities and reduce earning potential, creating a cycle of economic instability and recidivism. Housing restrictions, public housing limitations, and private rental discrimination against individuals with criminal records contribute to increased homelessness risk and geographic displacement. This lack of stable housing further exacerbates the challenges faced by low-income individuals, making it even more difficult to break free from the cycle of poverty and incarceration. Educational impact. Criminal justice involvement can severely impact educational opportunities, restricting access to financial aid, limiting enrollment options, and interrupting educational progress. These barriers reduce career opportunities and hinder professional advancement, perpetuating the socioeconomic disadvantages faced by those with criminal records. The school-to-prison pipeline. Socioeconomic factors play a significant role in early interactions with the criminal justice system, contributing to the phenomenon known as the school-to-prison pipeline. Under-resourced schools, zero-tolerance policies, increased police presence in poor schools, higher suspension and expulsion rates, and limited access to counseling and support services all contribute to this pipeline. Students from low-income backgrounds are more likely to face disciplinary actions that remove them from the educational environment and increase their likelihood of involvement with the criminal justice system. This early interaction with the justice system sets the stage for continued disadvantage and incarceration throughout their lives. Geographic targeting. Law enforcement practices often concentrate in low-income areas, resulting in increased surveillance, higher arrest rates, more aggressive policing, quality-of-life enforcement, and stop-and-frisk practices. This geographic targeting disproportionately impacts marginalized communities, perpetuating cycles of disadvantage and criminalization. Drug law enforcement. The war on drugs has had a particularly detrimental impact on poor communities. Disparate sentencing for crack versus powder cocaine, limited access to treatment alternatives, higher rates of prosecution, mandatory minimum sentences, and asset forfeiture practices all contribute to the overrepresentation of low-income individuals in the criminal justice system. Probation and parole systems. Supervision requirements often conflict with economic stability, creating additional barriers for low-income individuals. Mandatory meetings during work hours, travel restrictions affecting employment, drug testing requirements, housing restrictions, and employment verification requirements all contribute to the challenges faced by those under probation or parole supervision. Mental health and substance abuse. Limited access to mental health and substance abuse treatment further perpetuates the cycle of incarceration. Inadequate preventive care, the criminalization of mental illness, limited treatment alternatives, high rates of recidivism, and a lack of support services all contribute to the continued entanglement of low-income individuals in the criminal justice system. Technological barriers. Modern justice system requirements often assume access to technology, creating additional barriers for low-income individuals. Online court systems, electronic monitoring requirements, virtual court appearances, digital documentation requirements, and online fine payment systems all necessitate access to technology that many low-income individuals may not possess. Time poverty. The justice system demands significant time investments, further disadvantaging low-income individuals. Multiple court appearances, lengthy waiting periods, complex paperwork requirements, mandatory program attendance, and regular check-ins all consume valuable time and resources that low-income individuals may already lack. Intergenerational effects. The cycle of poverty and incarceration extends beyond the individual, impacting families and communities. Reduced household income, disrupted child development, limited educational support, increased trauma exposure, and reduced social mobility all contribute to the intergenerational effects of criminal justice involvement. Community impact. Concentrated enforcement in low-income areas creates neighborhood effects that further perpetuate cycles of disadvantage. Reduced property values, limited business investment, increased surveillance, damaged social networks, and reduced political power all contribute to the broader community impact of criminal justice involvement. Reform efforts and solutions. Several jurisdictions are implementing reforms to address the systemic biases and challenges faced by low-income individuals within the criminal justice system. Bail reform, risk assessment tools, pretrial services, non-monetary release conditions, and supervised release programs aim to reduce the reliance on cash bail and its disproportionate impact on low-income individuals. Fine and fee reform, ability to pay assessments, payment plans, fee waivers, and alternative sanctions seek to mitigate the financial burden of fines and fees on low-income individuals. Legal representation, increased public defender funding, early representation programs, holistic defense models, and civil legal aid integration aim to improve the quality of legal representation for low-income individuals. Diversion programs, mental health courts, drug courts, veterans courts, and community service alternatives provide opportunities for individuals to receive support and treatment rather than incarceration. Conclusion. The modern legal system's discrimination against the impoverished creates a self-perpetuating cycle of incarceration through multiple interconnected mechanisms. The combination of financial barriers, limited resources, and collateral consequences creates a system where poverty itself becomes criminalized. This systemic bias requires comprehensive reform, addressing both the immediate barriers to justice and the underlying socioeconomic factors that perpetuate this cycle. Success requires a multifaceted approach that includes legislative reform, policy changes, resource allocation, community investment, and systemic restructuring. Until these fundamental issues are addressed, the legal system will continue to disproportionately impact and further disadvantage those with limited financial resources, perpetuating cycles of poverty and incarceration that span generations and communities. The evidence demonstrates that current laws and practices create a system where economic status significantly determines outcomes, violating principles of equal justice and perpetuating societal inequalities. Reform efforts must address both the immediate barriers to justice and the underlying socioeconomic factors that perpetuate this cycle. This article was converted for free by the courtesy of Audio Read. If you enjoy the service, please consider upgrading your plan to listen to up to 500,000 words per article. Simply go to audioread.com/ad and you'll see the upgrade option. Your support helps us keep making the service better. Thank you.